An intriguing case today from 1981, where a police officer, Sergeant Yokum, and CB radio enthusiast Lucky 13 managed to record the sound of an actual UFO. Or could it be something else entirely? Join myself and Neil as we discuss the strange audio recording and the claims associated with it.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective, whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it? Welcome everyone back to Aliens Explored. This episode, Stu and I will be looking at the mystery of the St. Helens Police Department recorded UFO sound in Oregon, or as it's sometimes known as the Sergeant Russell Yokum event. My name is Neil Kelly.
And I'm Stu Jackson. And I'm excited about this. This is an actual recording, as some would have you believe, of an actual UFO with its engines revving up.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to make of it. I mean, this was a conversation this was it back in 1981, wasn't it? March 17th, 1981. Sergeant Russell Yokum of St. Helens, Oregon Police Department was on patrol on Highway 30 west of the Columbia River when he saw a bright light in the sky. I mean, he was used to seeing lights because the airport's not far away, but
just at 4 a.m.
At 4 a.m. It's a bit, yeah. I mean, do they have flights at 4 a.m.? I thought they.
God, I'd have thought so. Yeah, I've been on flights in the UK at that, or from the UK and to the UK at that time. I don't see why they wouldn't have flights at that time. But I think you hit the nail on the head a moment ago when you said he was used to seeing them.
He was used to seeing lights, but this was different he knew this was different from what he normally saw. This was a very, very bright light, which he said turned everything to day beneath it.
And of course, as a police officer, he is a very credible witness.
Yes.
It has to be, trained to be observant, to meticulously note details, all that kind of thing.
And trained to give evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, trained to not speculate. So we have to assume that
he's still a human being at the end of the day, and speculation is part of our makeup.
It is, but this was a professional police officer. How professional are the police out in the backwoods of Oregon?
Well, from what we understand, Sergeant Yokum, there was nothing to question. His fairly grounded guy, not given to flights of fancy that I'm aware of or anything like that. Yeah, he says it's not an aircraft that is seen. I can see us taking that on face value.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all I know about Sergeant Russell Yokum is what's from this story. So I don't really know the man, but the fact that he's a police officer and he's been promoted at some stage,
Well, that's it. I mean, this is what he's famous for, of course, and of course it doesn't end with him seeing a light, does it?
Well, no, he was. This is where Lucky 13 comes in. This was March 1981, so it was back in the days of CB Citizens Band Radio.
Breaker, breaker, good buddy.
Breaker, breaker, good buddy, and I knew quite a lot of people who were really into CB radio and had CB radios in their cars and such. And they'd all have their handles. And this guy who's bore the handle Lucky 13 called in.
Donald Askins, to give him his actual name.
Donald Askins, Lucky 13, who said that he too had seen a light, but he was seeing it somewhere else.
Yes. Not too far away, though, was it?
Not too far away. I mean, the light that the police said they saw, they said was bobbing up and down. Askins insisted the light that he was seeing was stationary. And then it was later proved that the light the officers saw during the first moments of the sighting from the courthouse was a man-made light on Sovey Island across the river.
Yes, but to the south of them, that's where the light that Lucky 13 was
so they
coming
looked to
from.
the south, and there was the light that Lucky 13 was watching. And so it was low and standing out over the river, where there were just a few faint lights.
And making a noise.
So Lucky 13 said, well, it's a really cold night, he said, but it's making a noise. I think they described it as revving up. This thing looks like it's...
It says it's like it's revving up its engines.
Revving up its engines. And he dangled his CB mic out of the window of his rented house.
And Sergeant Yokum, and he'd got a few other police... So this is not an isolated police officer. He'd got other police officers involved at this point. They managed to get hold of a tape recorder. I mean, obviously this is before the days of digital recordings and on phones and things like that.
This would have been a cassette recorder that you would have used to record.
Yep. This is a proper cassette recorder that you and I would remember, Neil, because we're getting on.
Where you press the two buttons down, you press play and record down together.
Play and record. Oh, do you remember having to adjust the azimuth screw? No? Okay.
No, I don't think mine... I think I had one that had some kind of measure or control on it. But
yeah, I don't know what it adjusted, but it adjusted something for playback.
I remember basically the thing was that you would record with the volume on as low as possible, on set to nothing. And then that would be what you recorded it at. So when you played it back, you could turn it up from there. Whereas if you record it with the volume on high, that would be the maximum volume it would play at.
Indeed. Now, of course, doing that, and I mean, you and I, we know a little bit more about sound recording now through our day jobs, don't we?
We do, yeah.
As actors. Yeah. And of course, when you do that, you get terrible gain, you get terrible distortion in the background, which is what you get to a degree with this recording. Unfortunately, it is quite poor quality. But I'll tell you what, why don't we just take a moment to listen to a snippet actually from this recording and hear the sound of this UFO.
It's revving up its engines. Can you hear it? I hope. 'Cause it's sure cold out here. Taping this, you guys. Yes, we are. a power plant diesel motor and a screeching noise in between it there with it.
Wow. It's quite a noise, isn't it, Neil?
It is quite a noise, but I can't quite place it. But if I heard a noise like that, if someone said, "What does this sound like?" I wouldn't immediately think, "Oh, wow, that sounds like an otherworldly noise." That sounds like a bit of industrial machinery going, or a turbine or something, or like my PC when I forget to turn it on at night, and that's when the disk drive starts running and 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever.
Yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying. I can certainly feel there's an industrial sort of mechanical almost element, although it's not. Oh, no, I mean, I've worked in the automotive industry. I've worked in heavy manufacturing in the past, and there's nothing specific that I can relate it to and say, it sounds like a turbine, or it sounds like a diesel engine, or, there's nothing. It doesn't sound like anything specific that I can put my finger on. But I do agree, it's got a certain mechanical sound. When it's coming from this ball of light, though, this ball of orange light, that's smoking gun time, surely.
So this Lucky 13, I mean, he can see a light and he can hear a sound, and he can be sure that they're the same thing. The sound is coming from the light. The thing that's making the light is also making the sound.
Well, he's pointing his CB mic. So this is one of the old desktop mics with the big push-to-talk button. They're quite solid things. They're also, I believe, they're cardioid mics, which means that rather than it being like picking up noise from all the way around, it only picks up sound from a particular direction. So he's had to take this microphone to his window, basically point the microphone in the direction of the light and held down the button, and that's how it's picking up the noise. So we can be fairly sure that it is coming from the direction of the light. It's not just a completely different sound from elsewhere.
Okay, I mean, one of the cops who heard it said it sounds like a power plant diesel motor, and a screeching noise in between it there or with it. He said.
I've heard a lot of diesel motors myself, and I drive a diesel car. It doesn't sound anything like that.
Well, no, I mean, it's not chugging. You can't hear it sort of dugga. But if it was revving really high.
You've seen the way I drive, haven't you?
Yeah.
I jest.
You know, a turboprop engine, a helicopter engine. If you can't hear the sound of the blades going, take away the sound of the blades going womp womp womp, and you've got a sound pretty much like that, haven't you?
Is it though? Because you still get that chugga noise, even then. Much more rapid, obviously, because you are talking about very high revolutions.
I mean, with a helicopter, if you're beneath it, what you mainly hear is the air being beaten down by the rotors, isn't it? But if you're close to a helicopter on the ground, or an aircraft, a turboprop aircraft on the ground, you've got that, or a jet engine even, you've got that kind of sound.
So that's an interesting point then. When you do have engines and machinery of that intensity, of that huge scale, to produce that sort of noise, you're aware of it. If you've got a turbine from a jet engine going off, I tell you, if it's going off 500 yards away, you know very much. You can feel it. You're very aware of it. But all he's got is a ball of light and a noise. Because he'd have said, "Oh yeah, I can feel the heat coming off," or "I can, it's blasting me off my feet," or he'd have said if there was some effect like that.
I'm thinking of the kind of military technology that might have been around at the time. And because I was in the military at the time, and I know that aircraft, I mean, they had all sorts of aircraft. I remember at my base in Germany in 1981, the A-10 Warthogs carrying out manoeuvres very close to our base. And they move like no other plane. They could suddenly, they'd be flying a jet plane, but it can almost sort of bring itself to a stop at stalling speed and then turn on its wing and fly off at 90 degrees. They're extremely manoeuvrable. Right. And they make that kind of sound, this whining jet engine sound. And they also had a technology called Starlight, mainly be used by helicopters, but basically if you're fighting a counterinsurgency, that you can really, you're not reliant on flares. You can actually light up an entire area, and see everything. Anything that moves is going to cast a big shadow and be clearly visible.
Yes, and whilst I'm well aware that the military are certainly here in the UK, I know this is the case, and I would hope it's the case in America as well, that the military are absolutely banned from doing things like targeting civilian vehicles for training practices and things like that. But as a person who has been targeted by military vehicles for training purposes, I've been in my car and I've been followed by jets, and I know they're training their guns on me to, as a training exercise. I also know they're absolutely, totally forbidden from doing that. But anyway, that's a whole. And I know they do things like that. So I can see what you're saying there, but surely, in the case of an aircraft, whether it's a helicopter or a jet of some description, you'd have had more than just a visual and an auditory element. There would have been a physical element, whether it's like the wind blowing you or something like that.
Not with a jet hundreds of feet up. You wouldn't feel a wind.
Was it hundreds of feet up though? This light?
I imagine it was at the kind of. I mean, it doesn't say. But I imagine it was at the kind of height where, if it was an aircraft, you wouldn't actually feel the physical disturbance of the air from it. That you'd be able to hear it, and if it was using a technology like Starlight to light up the ground below for counterinsurgency purposes, that's
conflating two things though, isn't it? Because Starlight, you say, is helicopter based.
I think it's normally helicopter based because it needs to be really a slow moving aircraft, or an aircraft that can hover over and there's no point doing it with a jet that whizzes over at 400 miles an hour.
That would tie in with Lucky 13 saying that this light was stationary over the river, and turning the whole place into daylight. But that's what I'm saying. There would have been massive ripples on the water. It would have.
I'm not sure there would have been, but certainly if it was a helicopter.
Well, if it's stationary, that suggests a helicopter to me.
Although at that time, I believe the US Air Force were also using Harrier jump jets.
Okay,
that would make that sound and could also use that light. I mean, the Harrier jump jets
would have created massive disturbances on the ground.
Not if it was high enough. Only when it came in really low. A jump jet at 100 feet up probably wouldn't make much of a disturbance on the river.
See, I'm getting the impression that where he said that the light was above the river, I'm getting the impression, and it is just an impression, that it's slightly above the river, that it's like just above it.
Okay.
Now, nothing I've read, to be fair, says that. That's just my impression.
Well, at one point, someone on the CB call says it's like the sun is just coming up. To which someone replies, "It better not be. It's awfully early. Awfully early for the sun. I don't think the sun would be just in that one spot."
But that suggests very low.
It suggests very low, but I'm not. I'm not. I mean, I'm assuming they're looking up to it. They're not seeing something at eye level. It's at least at treetop height, which is where a jump jet or a helicopter would be to deploy. You kind of want to be out of range of small arms, effective range of small arms fire. If you came in really low with starlight and there were insurgents underneath you and you lit them up, their first reaction would be to shoot at you. So, but it doesn't say, does it? It doesn't say how high.
Well, the Coast Guard confirmed that they had it on radar.
Yeah.
And that it went down.
I mean, it says that St Helens, where Sergeant Yokum was, is a small mill town about 20 miles northwest of Portland. His attention was drawn to a bright light that was moving upriver. It said aircraft passed over here regularly on their way to the airport, but this light was extraordinarily bright. So I'm thinking the kind of height that an aircraft would be as it's making its approach, but it's still 20 miles from the airport. That would still be fairly high, wouldn't it?
20 miles, you'd hope, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of coming in from thousands of feet up. 20 miles away, it's still going to be... It's going to be higher than treetop height, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they wouldn't be at cruising height, but yeah, certainly maybe...
It'll be coming in, but,
depending on the aircraft, yeah, maybe 10,000 feet, something like that.
I mean, aircraft cover great distances in a short space of time, don't they? I mean, I know that aircraft coming into Heathrow lower their undercarriage when they're still over Richmond Mortlake, which is miles from Heathrow. And I know that because the frozen body of an Indian fell out into my brother's street in Mortlake some years ago.
What?
He was a stowaway, stowed away in the undercarriage of an aircraft, and then froze to death at 40,000 feet or whatever the plane was flying at for hours on end. And then when the plane opened to lower its undercarriage, he fell out. His frozen body landed in the street.
Wow. Gosh. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, so that's how I know the kind of distances. So Mortlake is still quite a long way from. Yeah, it's a good half an hour's drive from. Yeah, more than half an hour's drive from Heathrow.
Mm.
But planes are already lowering their undercarriage at that point.
Yes, well, planes obviously they've got a straight line, which makes it easier than cars, but also, they do move way quicker. So 20 miles away is not going to be that far, but definitely I agree with you, above treetop height. But no, I just, like I say, it's just this, I can't shake it, this idea that it was much, much lower than that.
I mean, you would think that the Coast Guard, at least, would have been aware of a military manoeuvre going on.
You would, unless it was a secret military exercise.
Yeah.
But then, as soon as they saw people looking at them, don't you think they'd have buggered off? This thing hung around for ages. About half an hour.
Yeah. I mean, you would think... I mean, the first light they saw turned out to be a man-made light on Sovey Island across the river, and the fog variable that night had created the bobbing effect. So it was foggy as well.
Well, we don't know if that's the first light that Sergeant Yokum saw.
That's the first light. But then Lucky 13 was on the radio saying, no, I'm looking at something different. And that's when they turned to the south and saw this other light.
No, I'm wondering if he saw something overhead, then went to have a look at it, but ended up looking at the wrong thing in response.
So I thought...
Do you see what I mean?
Sergeant Yokum saw a bright light that was moving upriver.
Mm-hmm.
It was extraordinarily bright.
At some point he's going to lose sight of that.
Yeah, he radioed headquarters, then drove on to St Helens to look at the light from the county courthouse on the banks of Columbia River. And
that's the point he started seeing the bobbing light, but mistook it for what he'd seen previously.
Yeah, he got up there with other officers, but they were looking in the wrong direction. So
yeah,
that for me, that puts a little bit of a question mark over Sergeant Yokum's reliability there. That he became disorientated by going into a building and went out looking at the wrong direction, but still never, I guess, as he was making his way up to an upper story, saw a bright light and thought, oh, that must have been the light I was looking at, but didn't think, well, wait a minute, no, it was in the other direction.
Yeah, I think that's easily done, especially when you're talking about moving lights. You see a bright light and it's easy to jump to, oh, that must be the one. Yeah. Well, okay. I'll tell you what, let's have another listen to this sound, and then we'll do our usual summary. So here it is again.
It's revving up its engines. Can you hear it? I hope. 'Cause it's sure cold out here. Taping this, you guys. Yes, we are. Sounds like to me a power plant diesel motor and a screeching noise in between it there with it.
So there we are. What do you think then, Neil? What's your summary thoughts?
My first reaction is that it's military. I mean, I can think of a military equipment being deployed that I've seen that would match that description, that would make it, a Harrier jump jet makes a sound like that, and that kind of light. That's especially the fact that it's lighting up the ground beneath. That's a searchlight. That's a counterinsurgency.
You sound quite convinced.
Based on the evidence I've seen, it just sounds too much like that for me to be otherworldly.
Okay. Well, I mean, for me, the only difficulty really with that, and I get where you're coming from, but like you said, the Coast Guard hopefully have been aware of military activities, unless it was top secret. But if it was top secret, then the moment people are standing there gawping at it, it would have gone. So that kind of defies the logic of that.
No, I'm thinking not secret, but the Coast Guard said they didn't know about it. But I also know what military communications are like as well. I mean, when I was on exercise in Germany, I was sent out to look for a missing drone. This was at that time there was a technology called Midge. It was the Canadair C-89, which was a jet-powered drone which would be launched with a rocket booster off the back of a truck. It would fly a pre-programmed route and it would be beaming back television images of whatever it overflew. And the idea was it would fly around in a circuit, come back to its user, the engine would cut out, it would deploy parachutes and airbags, come in for a nice gentle landing, ready to be reprimed, reprogrammed for the next mission. And yeah, for the commander in the field, it's the answer to the question, what's on the other side of that hill? But like so much military technology, it was prone to catastrophic failure, and it was quite common for you launch the thing and immediately lose contact with it, and you just have to send people out to look for it. And I was on exercise, they asked for German speakers who could go out and go around knocking on farmers' doors and ask if it's possible that our aircraft has crashed on your land. Can we come and look for it? Yeah. We eventually were recalled to base and said, okay, we found it. And then later we found out that actually it had already been found before we'd even been sent out to look for it. Just word hadn't. That's the army for it. Anyone who's listening who's done military service will be familiar with that kind of scenario.
Fair enough. For me, a lot of this hangs, however, on what height this object was. I think without knowing that, it's really hard to gauge. I really do like the idea that it's otherworldly, though, and that we've got this actual audio recording of an otherworldly vehicle. But
do we have other examples of UFOs apparently lighting up the ground beneath them?
Oh yes.
All right. This is a UFO, but it's just whether it's another worldly UFO. Here's a question.
Definitive form, yeah. We don't know what it is, ergo it's a UFO. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it says on the transcript, it says, what you are about to hear is the actual sound of an unidentified flying object. Which is true. It was something in the sky at night. We don't know what it is. It's a UFO, but whether it's otherworldly, I think is still a question mark over that.
You can say that of bird calls for me, because I haven't got a clue what bird is what from its call.
But you know it's a bird, don't you?
So all unidentified. Okay, well, what do you think, listeners? Is this an actual sound of an alien spacecraft? Is it something much more mundane? Is it military, as Neil suggests? Or is there something else that we've missed entirely? Do message us and let us know. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook. And you can also let us know if there are any otherworldly matters that you would like us to discuss on this show. So that's it on this one. Next week, Neil, it's Halloween. Looking forward to that. So I thought next week we'd go to the movies and we would discuss acclamation of alien visitation through Hollywood. Are we being programmed to accept aliens through Hollywood movies?
It's a good question.
It is, and we'll be addressing that next week. So that's it from me.
And that's it from me. Sorry, I just goes off momentarily.
As you do. And yeah, in the meantime, keep watching those skies and always keep us a cassette player. Take care.
Bye.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.